Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, Miss. In today's session, I'm going to make a quick presentation about the translation analysis of informative and expressive text, which I've been assigned for. So let's get started. Let's move to the next slide. So, there's two texts that I've used for my translation assignment. The first one is it's an article about children who need an early education using social media to prevent cyberbullying. The title is Pentingnya Edukasi Penggunaan Medsos pada Siswa Bisa Cegah Cyberbullying. The article is from kompas.com and it was published in 28 August 2025. So it's about 6 months ago. The second article I use is Mencari Gelas. Cerpen Mencari Gelas, short story Mencari Gelas from bacapetra.co. It's about a man who searched his apartment for hidden glass. It's mostly monologue and narrative, so it's quite represent the expressive text. Alright, so the theory I was used to analyze the text is from Peter Newmark from the textbook of translation in 1988. So the first one, since the article primary function is to convey the fact, expert opinion, and practical advice. So according to that, the dominant method applies in this translation is communicative translation. Yeah. For the second one, the short story Mencari Gelas, this belong to Newmark category of expressive text, specifically serious imaginative literature. So since its function is to express the narrator's inner consciousness rather than to inform, so that's why Newmark argues that in expressive text, the core is the mind of the speaker, and that the translator's loyalty must be to the author ideologue, not the comfort of the target reader. So that's why the method mostly used is the semantic translation. Okay, let's move to the next slide. This is the text I used to paragraph from the informative text from article from Kompas. The first one is from the source language. There is two paragraphs, and the target language is my full translation. I'm gonna use how I translate this using an analysis chart. Okay. I make the analysis based on phrase, not a whole sentence. So we can make it, we can analyze it fully. So that's why let's move. The first one, there's a phrase setiap masyarakat in Indonesia. I decided to translate it into everyone in society. I use something called modulation. The first choice I was used is the literal every society, but the meaning would suggest that many different society are being compared. So that's why to prevent the misunderstanding about the meaning, I use the everyone in society because the author is refers to setiap masyarakat, to an individual within the society. That's why I use the everyone in society. The second, the harus lalu, and it's just a literal translation. So harus lalu is must always. There is nothing really particular about this. For the phrase berhati-hati dan bijak, it's also translated using literal translation. to be careful and wise. Dalam menggunakan, I translate it to when use transposition. So the Indonesian preposition dalam or in is maybe grammatically correct in the source text, but English is flow much better with the conjunction like when. So that's why I change the structure using when, so it can more flow and more native in the English journalist or how English should be written. And the next is the term media social or medsos. I translated into fully social media. I use something called expansion. So the term medsos is casual in Indonesia, the blending of media social that has no equivalent short form in English. So that's why I cannot find the exact equivalent. So I just write it out in full every time to keep the meaning clear. The next is phrase apalagi anak-anak. I use especially children, and the technique is modulation. Apalagi can mean let alone or moreover in literal translation, but using those would sound too informal or in English news, and so that's why the especially can preserve the emphasis used by apalagi, and the emphasis is the children that are the group that most need the attention. So that's why I decided to use especially. And the second is the anak-anak, which I translated into children, which is the plural meaning of anak-anak. In English, we don't use like something like children, but the children term is already represent the meaning of anak-anak. The next, saat ini memang, I translated into today. I use something called reduction. So the particle memang, its function is some kind of affirmative emphasizer, similar to indeed, but including it into English would make the sentence sounds unnatural. So that's why I remove it. I'm sorry. I remove it to avoid the unnaturalness in the translation. Banyak anak-anak. This is similar like the previous one. Banyak anak-anak. Banyak mean many. It's the literal. And the anak-anak, I use term children, which already represent the plural of children. So, terutama in Indonesia, I translated particularly in Indonesia, basically the literal translation. Okay, in Indonesia is geographic term, so it's not translated. The next is yang sudah memiliki medsos sejak dini. I translated into already have social media account from a young age. I use something called expansion and modulation. I added the account because having social media in English sounds ambiguous. It could refer to general access rather than personal account ownership. So, to clarify this, I feel the what's Newmark called a case game. So, I use account, so the meaning can be specific into something that the writer intended. For the term sejak dini, I use some natural English idiom from a young age rather than literal translation since early, which can make it sound unnatural. Move to the next. The phrase sehingga diperlukan, I decided to make it which makes. Sehingga, which makes necessary. Necessary is put in the last of the sentence. So I use something transposition, so the sehingga diperlukan which make it a verb, I make it in the as an adverbial in the back of the sentence. And what fills the gap between which makes and necessary is literasi dalam bidang digital dan cyber. Diperliterasi in digital and cyber field. I use something called transposition again. So Indonesian plays the comparative lebih dalam after the noun, but in English it was before. So English plays deeper literasi lebih dalam, but lebih dalam, deeper, is put in the front of the literacy in English. And bidang, I use term field, so I also put it in the end of the sentence. Terlebih lagi, furthermore, this is the equivalent. Anak-anak yang sudah memiliki metode, children who already use social media. I use modulation. In the other sentence, the focus may be the children who owning account. So I decided not to use the have because it will make the meaning change. So that's it. The term rawan sekali, it may be susceptible. It becomes susceptible. And the last one, from the first paragraph, is mengalami perundungan secara berani atau cyberbullying. I don't know if it's the mistakes from the writer, because it doesn't really make sense for me. Mengalami perundungan secara berani, what does it mean? But I decided to keep it as the bold harassment. As for the cyberbullying itself, I decided to not change it because the cyberbullying itself is an international term used both in Indonesia or English. Let's move to the second paragraph. Menurut Guru Besar Psikologi Universitas Indonesia, Rosmini, according to Rosmini Agus Salim, Professor of Psychology of Indonesia, this is the quite a major transposition because Indonesia places the long attributes such as title, institution name before the main clause, but English puts the person name in the first and the title as appositive of the word. So I'm going to look it down and this sentence into more smaller group. The first one is the guru besar. I decided to use professor as the functional equivalent because the literal meaning of guru besar, which is great teacher, is not really the exact meaning. In the practice, guru besar refer to highest academic rank in Indonesia, which is equivalent to professor. The second, university Tas Indonesia. Sorry, I misspelled the Indonesian. I decided to change it into University of Indonesia. The University of, because the name is university and the name of the university is Indonesia. It's a combination from the literal translation and transference. Yeah. Okay, the Rose Mini Agus Salim, it's still Rose Mini Agus Salim, unchanged, because this is transparent personal name of the living people. It cannot be translated. Move to the sangat penting untuk membekali. It is very important to equate. I use direct equivalent with some structural adjustment. The impersonal tone of sangat penting. It is very important that from the structure it changed a bit. It changed a bit from the phrase into clause. Yeah. As for the untuk membekali, I use the term to equate, which can represent the meaning precisely. The children again, anak-anak, children is same like the previous one. When dalam menggunakan social media, when using social media methods, I use the expansion social media agar terhindar dari, so they can avoid. I use transfer CC. The Indonesian one is using a passive form terhindar, but it's changed into the infinitive to avoid, because it can be more natural in English. Berbagai macam pengaruh buruk, termasuk cyberbullying, various negative influence, this is literal translation, termasuk cyberbullying, including cyberbullying. It's also cyberbullying, which remains unchanged. So that's it for the first text, which is informative text from Kompas.com. Let's move to the second one, the expressive text. This is the first paragraph, the second paragraph from the short story, and this is my full translation. Let's move and analyze by phrase. The first phrase, which is kubaringkan tubuh keranjang, I decided to translate into I lay my body down on the bed. I use something called transposition. So from the term kubaringkan, I use I as a subject because Indonesia have several terms to refer to I, but in English itself as a subject there is only I in, so that's why I cannot find anything suitable to represent the meaning, the artistic meaning. And then kubaringkan tubuh, I lay my body, rather than I lay down, which is I kept the my body because the word tubuh can create a more emotional distance, so it can maintain the emotional and artistic side. The second, ingin sekali ku coba mencari gelas itu lagi. I decided I want so badly to try looking for that glass. Again, I use something called modulation. Ingin sekali, I decided to make it into want so badly, which carries a stronger feeling than a neutral I really want. Yeah. I also decided to make ku coba into to try and mencari gelas itu lagi, looking for that glass again. This is the literal translation, the rest of them. Namun aku sudah mengecek keseluruhan ruangan itu selama 3 kali, but I've already checked the whole room 3 times. This is quite literal. With a mineral adjustment, the word sudah, I decided to drop it because the 3 times sudah 3 times selama 3 kali, it's selama 3 kali, selama which is can be translated into during, I use 3 times and decided not to use during 3 times because the 3 time is contain the meaning of selama, during, the atau, or I still use the exact meaning and also with the titik-titik. This is for the first paragraph. The second one, aku masih menerka-nerka. I translate it into I'm still guessing. I use something called modulation. So Indonesia use something called reduplication to show that the action is ongoing and repetitive. But because the English has no such device, so the adverb still carries the durative meaning instead. Yeah. Then the more, di mana sebenarnya kau sembunyikan solution gelas itu, sebenarnya become exactly a bit of modulation. The pronoun kau, you, because English doesn't have the another term for you which can represent the meaning or the artistic meaning, because Indonesia have several term for you, like kamu, kau, engkau, and anything else which carries different meaning, and kau carries artistic meaning. So yeah, this is unavoidable. So yeah, the rest of them is literal translation. Di kolong ranjang tidak ada. Under the bed, nothing. Yeah, I preserve the fragment tidak ada to be nothing, to preserve the narrative or the emotional artistic style used by the author. English would normally insert there is nothing, but I use a dash instead to keeping the narrator rhythm. Yeah. The next, begitu pula pada laci di bawah televisi. The same with drawer beneath the television. Begitu pula, I use the same with. Then the next, bahkan di lemari tempat dulu kau simpan pakaianmu pun tetap tak kutemukan. Even in the closet where you used to keep your clothes, still nothing. I use reduction in the last phrase, tetap tak kutemukan, into still nothing, because it makes the previous tense, which is tidak ada, into nothing, tak kutemukan, still nothing, which is repetitive and quite artistic. The next, kusaka keringat di dahi. I wipe the sweat from my forehead. This is literal. Ternyata pencarian ini cukup melelahkan. I used the search. It turns out is quite exhausting. Ternyata I keep it into it turns out and uh, make it in the middle of the research, and it's quite exhausting as an adverbial. So yeah, the rest is the rest is literal. And yeah, that's it for me. A quiet analysis from me, from my source text, from narrative and informative text. I'm sorry if I didn't uh, serve it very well. Yeah, but I hope you still can get what I mean. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.